So I'm delighted to be with one of the UK's foremost experts in service accommodation, John Kerr. John, who's featured in Property Investor News magazine, the latest issue. I don't have a copy here in front of me. I picked it up on Sunday morning. I can't remember which page, but a good two-page spread about John Kerr, an interview which Property Investor News did with John. So I'm delighted to have an opportunity to be with John this morning, and also you can have that opportunity to have a meeting with John or see John live on my service accommodation panel on Wednesday evening with John, Justin Whittemore, Justin Brewer, and a few other people as well who may not have the same profiles, but it's worth listening to all because they've got different views, different properties based in different places. John's stronghold is both Scotland, Milton Keynes, and I know John's expanding as well. So John, huge thanks for you joining me this morning, and huge thanks for the listeners as well. So John, I rattled on and it's easy for me to do so, so I'll stop there. Tell me about yourself.
Well, thank you, Brendan. Thank you for inviting me to join you on your panel next Wednesday. I thought I knew about property. I qualified as a chartered surveyor and then ended up working as a chief executive for a bunch of lawyers, both in Edinburgh and for 5 years in London, until about the late 2008, when suddenly the light dawned. I went to a property investing meeting and I realized I could buy multiple properties rather than just buy one and sell it. And that's what I did over 2.5 years, bought deals. So I ended up with a portfolio from Maidstone to Glasgow. And what I've done since I quit my job in 2010 is I've basically managed that, develop a property network in Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire, run a few property meetings, and concentrate on converting my portfolio as much as was appropriate into serviced accommodation and learning in the process. I started doing that in 2009 in Edinburgh, by the way.
Sure. John, in terms of software, so in terms of software for service accommodation, what do you think are the most important things to get completely right?
On software?
Like channels, the channels which people use, like, is it Kiko?
Well, you're jumping straight into channel managers, which is pretty advanced stuff for somebody who's starting with one property. I think the most important thing to get right is your own system, really, and to help to use software to do it. So the marketing platforms are obviously the listing sites, what they call the OTAs, the online travel agents, and you'll all know what I'm talking about. Airbnb is the obvious easy one to get started, and it's really full of amateurs, and it's pretty low prices in the main, by and large, in relative to what you can get from others like Booking.com and the hotel-oriented platforms. So those are the obvious marketing platforms. There are plenty more, but you need to put your own systems in place to raise the money. And I think for me, when I moved to Booking.com, Brendan, it was Xero.com and bookkeeping package, because I was enabled then to send out nice-looking invoices with easy ways to pay, well, a variety of ways to pay, like you get on most invoices, relatively straightforward. So when you're moving into a business, you need to be doing that. And Xero, it was the best piece of software for me.
Sure. And do you use other software like Arth Online? Have you looked at using Arth Online?
Yeah, for my property portfolio, I've decided, I haven't taken the action yet to move on to Arth Online. I've decided to do that, but haven't started the account yet. And the reason I've delayed over these years is I started off way back in 2008 with a piece of software which was kind of one of the main ones, and I just couldn't putting in the data was not my bag. So with Arthur Online, at least, they say, oh, we'll do that. But I'm waiting to find my ideal VA/PA who's going to work with me in my business. Somebody will work with me in my business going forward, and then they will supervise that.
So what advice would you give about channels? I know you say, so the advantage of channels is to making sure that you don't get double booked and so forth. Or one of the key benefits of channels is stopping getting double booked. Where would people start? When should they be looking at the online channels in terms of unit size or portfolio size for service accommodation? Or is it not as simple as black and white?
Well, getting started is quite a challenge for some people, and fairly enough, not a challenge for others. So the barriers to entry to serviced accommodation, you'd think were quite high, bearing in mind all the things you've got to do: find the right property, decide it's the right property, stage it, dress it, market it, get it cleaned, all of that. But for some people, those barriers are low. So I would start with Airbnb. It really is simple, it's intuitive, and you can be online in 15 minutes, providing you've got a good set of photographs, a good set of images done professionally. So I would certainly start with Airbnb. And I've just had a call with a client actually, and you could if you were just doing Airbnb, you could do it completely automatically, providing your housekeeper could access a calendar. You could automate it completely. But as soon as you bring in a second platform, a second listing site, such as Booking.com or HomeAway or TripAdvisor's site, Holiday Lettings, these are the four main ones that I use, but there are many, many others. Then you need something to coordinate those to stop you from being double booked. But more importantly, that will update your pricing across all of those platforms. And that's called a channel manager. They do much, much more, and there are many, many, many of them, and it's quite a confusing marketplace. So I haven't got any recommendations for people, except to say that, do you know what? Evivo, EVIIVO.com is one that I use just to get going. Once you know you need one. And if you've got more than half a dozen properties, apartments, then Kegel. But when you go on the forums, you'll find people who have love-hate relationships with these. There's another one that I've yet to try, and I will use. It's Scottish-based, funnily enough. I will use it for my Edinburgh one, which, to be honest with you, I've not got a channel manager on that because it just fills up anyway. And I'm concentrating on expanding my service accommodation in areas like Maidstone, Leighton Buzzard, Milton Keynes, Nottingham, and around, and Peterborough, where I'm doing it at the moment. So that's my take on it. So that third channel manager is called Super Control, but I haven't really properly evaluated it. Other people say Elina, ELINA, which describes itself as a property management software. I've not really got the fact that it's ideal for channel manager, but it might well be. I know a good friend of mine uses Beds24, and I've just posted for my workshop tomorrow for my workshop attendees a whole list of suggested channel managers, little summaries of them. So that's my take on channel managers, really.
Sure. So, John, in terms of software, we've looked at the channel managers, but we've also talked about optimizing Airbnb. We haven't gone in huge depth because I'm sure that's what we're going to do on Wednesday with plenty of time to go into detail about answering the key solutions or answering the key questions about how you optimize your profile on Airbnb, just like how you optimize your profile on LinkedIn. And you say getting photos is one of the key things. Now, what we're going to look at is in terms of what do you think your best investment is under £100, which has helped you move forward in your business. And we were discussing, what do you want to say, John? What
Yeah, it's a good question for me, because I know instantly what it is. And it's a key safe, what people otherwise know as a lockbox. For the property that I have up in Edinburgh, which I've been running since 2009 as a holiday let. I get groups and families on short breaks for typically 4 nights up there, sometimes visiting academics. That's all I get for this particular property. It's a 2-bedroom apartment in Edinburgh's Old Town, right in the middle of a World Heritage area. And my housekeeper who was doing the cleaning and the checking in of the guests, but up until about 3 years ago, said to me, I think I can't do this anymore because of the double yellow lines and the time. And she'd like to put a key safe on the block, or like me to do that. And I'd used them for my let properties for tradespeople, and I really thought they were good. But I never thought it would work because it's a council block, and I thought they would knock it off. But you know what? We put it on. Another one appeared next to it a few weeks later, and it's transformed my business completely. And I'll tell you how. I've had probably 300 or 400 guests, maybe in the 2 or 3 years since we put it on. Not one complaint whatsoever about the keys in the lockbox. I have a lockbox outside the block, a key safe outside the block, and a key safe outside the apartment door. So there's 2 of them for me to do. And it means that I can manage my property, and I do. I manage and market that property from Milton Keynes, where my office is, and that property is in Edinburgh, and it works. And I would not have believed that if you'd said that to me 4 years ago.
John, I just want to say huge thanks for your time this morning. But before we go, and we're going to hear much more about you this coming Wednesday evening at the Serviced Accommodation Panel. That's now Wednesday, the 28th of September, 2016. Of course, you know, this interview is going to be on video and audio after the day, and people are going to say, look, we've missed listening to John on that panel. So what is the best way for people to connect with you post 28th of September?
The best way for them to connect with me is to schedule a call with me on my website. There's a little pop-up there, and I'll give you the website address in a moment. And if they schedule a call with me, then and tell them where they met me, then I'll know who they are, and we'll go and get a cup of coffee, and hopefully we'll have a nice Skype call together for 20 minutes and a chat. And if I can help them on their journey, I'd be delighted to do so. And it's a lovely little plug-in on my WordPress website, which is a little pop-up which goes straight into my calendar. And if they want to reschedule it, they can do that online, or even cancel online if something else comes up. So the website address is yourpartnerinproperty.co.uk. So that's all lowercase, yourpartnerinproperty.co.uk. And my email address is john@yourpartnerinproperty.co.uk.
Sure. John, before you go, we were discussing about you expanding your portfolio. I'm not sure the places I can... do you want to go into a little bit more detail about where you're going to expand and how?
Yeah, I want to expand my business rather than my portfolio. I've got enough properties to be managing around the country. So my business is serviced accommodation, but it's unique serviced accommodation. I'm doing serviced apartments, as I mentioned, in those 4 towns, Peterborough, Bedford, etc. And that's working with a big person. But what my skill is, and what I'm different from all the other serviced accommodation providers, I take my properties, wherever they are, and I'll take your properties as the landlord, and I'll find a market in the serviced accommodations market sector for those properties. So I've just been talking to somebody in Warrington, and I reckon there'll be a good contractor market for there. And he says, what do you mean by contractors? So contractors generally they come as management consultants. Often they come with hard hats, as you would recognize them off the site. Some might wear a tie, and some might have grit in their boots. But the point is, I'm always amazed when I open a new property where my guests are coming from. I had 2 professional Argentinian golfers here in Leighton Buzzard recently.
Wow.
Wouldn't have thought that. They came to Woburn, and obviously Woburn Golf Course is a big attraction, and I just discounted that.
John, so that's interesting. So just to say, what your service accommodations may be of interest to people. Peterborough, you mentioned, Edinburgh, and the other 2 locations are?
Well, I'm converting my own properties in Maidstone, Nottingham, because that happens to be where there are. Now, there isn't a serviced apartment market in Maidstone. Sacco apartments aren't there. And there's not much business there, but I reckon I'll find a market which will be outside of the business traveller market. So I'm looking to work with people all over because I can streamline the conversion and marketing process and find markets for virtually all types of properties, virtually anywhere in the UK. But the big question is, that's not the problem. The big question is, will it be more profitable than any other way of letting that property? That's the question. It's not whether you can do it, it's whether it's worth doing it.
And that's what we're going to discover this coming Wednesday evening on the 28th of September with amazing John Kerr, who I've known for many years, one of the few people I've managed to stay in touch since I met you first, I think, at David Salmon's almost 10 years ago.
That was a long time ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know. David Salmon's all the way through. So John, who I know for quite a long time. So huge thanks, John, for joining me this morning. And I'm going to catch up with you this coming Wednesday, Central London, yards away from Oxford Circus. So if you want to know anything about service accommodation, this is the event to be at. This coming Wednesday.
Thank you, Brendan. I'm really looking forward to it.
John, huge thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.